I find it ironic that the Prime Minister is using a burner phone and all his staff over in China. But we're making a deal, it's Huawei 2.0, to come back into Canada, and we get nothing but potential job losses in our factories right across the board.
I feel for the Premier. He lost his bestie in Chrystia Freeland, and now he's gotten this from Mr. Carney, and it's not pleasant, and it does set the table for some difficult times for Ontario. There's no question about it.
Hello, gang. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. Get your Canadian federal politics right here. Smash the like, hit subscribe. If you feel like you have something to share, leave a comment below. We're always curious to hear what people have to say. That's it. Let's get right into the video. This is a wild one. Check this out. Let's go.
In signing a deal with China, Prime Minister Mark Carney handed a win to prairie premiers whose provinces were greatly impacted by the economic hurt of massive Chinese agricultural tariffs. But his bargaining chip, 49,000 low-cost Chinese electric vehicles entering our market, has angered the Premier of Canada's most populous province, with Ontario's Doug Ford suggesting it's the end of their partnership. Here to dig into that political divide is our front bench. With me tonight, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Benzie, I have to start with you because I was preparing for the segment tonight reading your piece in the Star, which uses this line to describe it. Employing the lingo of a jilted romantic partner, the Premier sniffled. Well, at least I know where I stand now. Is this romance over, or is it just a bend in the relationship, Benzie?
I think it's just a bend in the relationship, but there is I mean, today's vibe at Queen's Park with the Premier was a little like a Taylor Swift song. I mean, it was like, does like Mark Carney have Doug Ford's cardigan or something still? I don't know. There was a weird kind of a little bit of, it was wounded feelings. But I think that it is too important, the relationship is too important politically to both men for this to be a blow up, you know. It's not like they are never ever going to get back together, because I think they will. But I think Mr. Carney didn't do a great job communicating, even though everyone and his aunt and uncle knew that when Scott Moe and him were going to China at the same time, canola was going to happen, and there was going to have to be a concession on Canada's part, and this 100% tariff on Chinese EVs was going to have to be lifted. And now it'll be 6.1% for 49,000 EVs, which, by the way, Vashi, is the same amount of Chinese EVs that came into Canada in 2023. So it's not like this is going to flood the market the way that Mr. Ford is saying, but his hurt feelings are not, they're understandable.
Was it surprising at all to you, Lisa, that there wasn't more effort made to communicate this in advance? Like, there was effort made to communicate it to the United States in order to mitigate major blowout there, but not to Doug Ford, which is kind of surprising, just given how long it's been since, you know, we've had Doug Ford more consistently on the side of a Liberal Prime Minister than we have Scott Moe, for example, who is totally supportive of Prime Minister Carney right now.
Well, I'm going to pick up where Benzie left off and say maybe the parties are going to have to shake it off, just like Taylor Swift used to say as well. Oh, no. Sorry, we'll have to keep going on
so
the line.
Hip,
You're up next, Gallant. The reality is this is part of the reason why I don't miss politics, because it's messy. It's really messy. And as a prime minister, you have to make trade-offs. I would assume, Vashi, quite frankly, that he didn't want to give the drop to the Premier because he didn't quite know whether or not he was going to have an announcement to make. It's really tough to do these things at the last minute. You don't quite know what's happening. There's a time zone difference. Who knows how quickly this all came together, quite frankly. But they do have to work together. I feel for the Premier. He lost his bestie in Chrystia Freeland, and now he's gotten this from Mr. Carney, and it's not pleasant, and it does set the table for some difficult times for Ontario. There's no question about it. But, you know, you want the top job to be Prime Minister. Tough decisions are going to have to be made. They're not always linear. Politics are involved. It is messy, and we'll see what ends up happening on the vote side.
From a more crass, if I could make it, political viewpoint, I was listening to some of the analysis over the past few days, and, you know, Brian, it is interesting the degree to which people, you know, who have run campaigns point out how significant a lot of the seats where the auto sector is represented are to the Liberals, right? The number of swing seats, the number of seats up for grabs, the number, just purely like from a vote-based perspective, versus, let's say, where the canola news was best received in Saskatchewan and to a lesser degree Manitoba, where the same opportunities don't exist. What do you make of that?
Yeah, first off, Tom, you can thank me later for ending the Taylor Swift reference chain going on, so I'm not going to make one.
We'll get back to the absurdity of Canadian federal politics in a moment. Just a friendly reminder to smash the like, hit subscribe. Please leave a comment below if you have something to share. Let's get back to the nutty video.
Look, Bash, I think you're absolutely right, and anybody that's accusing the Prime Minister of playing politics on these topics, I think, is not really paying attention. I mean, there's really, from a crass point of view, the word that you use, there's really no reason to do this in this way. Same thing with the MOU with Alberta. I mean, there's nobody that's going to make the argument is because they think they're going to gain a bunch of seats, or even if it's to retain seats in the West. I mean, the math just doesn't make sense from a political point of view. So I'm going to sound like a broken record. I always say this on this question. I mean, my sense is that either that doesn't really matter, and I think a lot of people would say, well, that's kind of cool. We've never really seen that before, so that could be good. But if it does matter, if they are really making political calculations with these moves, my guess is, again, this is the broken record, that they are saying to themselves, all that's going to matter at the end of the day is how the economy is doing. And for whatever reason, they think that these moves are the right thing for the Canadian economy. And they believe that whenever they go back to the polls, if they can demonstrate some real wins, some movement, some improvement when it comes to the economic standards of our country, they'll be better placed to win the election. So my guess is that it's simple as that. It's one of the two. It just doesn't really compute with this Prime Minister, or it really is the economy, the economy, the economy.
Even though from the second half of that framing, which both make a lot of sense to me, Tom, if you have an auto sector in total disrepair, like with people losing their job or companies moving to the United States, not to say that one move with China would have blunted that, but that would have to be a concern from an economic perspective as well.
It is. But you have to put the two together, because I'm a little bit different from Brian on this. I think it's a sea change to have Scott Moe going to China with Mark Carney. I think it's amazing that Danielle Smith and Mark Carney sat down and had a memorandum of understanding about a pipeline. I'm not naive. I don't think it switches a bunch of seats. But it's the first time in my political memory that you have the Western provinces looking towards Ottawa and seeing an ally. With regard to the auto sector, it's been hard hit by Donald Trump. Why did we put ourselves in lockstep with the Americans on this 100% tariff? Well, it was Trudeau and Biden, and the Americans had made the call, and we just went along with it. And that got us nothing in return except grief and tariffs from Trump. So for Carney to go to China and say we're going to open back up, this goes exactly to the plate that Doug Ford said he wanted us to do. He ran that ad during the Baseball World Series. He ran that ad with the clip of Ronald Reagan. What was the essence of that clip? Let the market prevail. Let people buy stuff where it's cheaper. Don't tariff it, because otherwise it's consumers who pay that. Why should Canadian automobile consumers, somebody looking to buy an electric car to do the right thing environmentally, why shouldn't they have the right to buy a $35,000 or $40,000 Chinese electric vehicle that is of the same caliber and quality as a $70,000 Tesla? Why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? There was no proof of dumping. There was an affirmation of dumping, no objective analysis of it. We just went along with the Yanks. Well, it got us nothing in return. And I think that Carney's thinking about Canadian consumers in all of this, because they're being hard hit by all the madness around King Trump. So I'm fine with this decision, and I do find it worthwhile to note that there is a sea change in the attitude between Ottawa and the Western provinces both ways. And I think that that'll play out very importantly into the next election.
Well, I would say they're certainly used to being the subject of this discussion way more over the last number of years. Like, why do they feel kind of put off than Ontario would be? Just a final question to you, Benzie, though. My guess is that it's the auto industry that certainly has the ear of the Premier, because to Tom's point, I understand everything he's laying out. But what we did, the case that was made at the time was that those cars are cheaper because of a heavily subsidized industry in China, which puts at a disadvantage the Canadian industry, which at the time we were all in on from the federal and provincial perspective with taxpayer dollars. That market is very different now, so I understand even an argument based on the change in the market. But my guess is the auto sector is leaning heavily into the Premier at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and they have his ear. Understandably, it's a very important sector here in Ontario, Vashi. It's the most important manufacturing sector, but the Prime Minister has to think of the whole country. I think, though, if I'm Mark Carney looking at an electoral map, Ontario is way more important than Saskatchewan. So those Saskatchewan 14 seats, maybe he picks up one more there. He has many dozens of seats that he could lose here in Ontario. Now, I asked Mr. Ford today if he was going to make this an issue during an election, which we could have one this year. He said he thought it would be, but he said, I'm not going to get involved. I think it would be very unlikely, Vashi, for Doug Ford to be campaigning against Mark Carney. Remember, the one person that Doug Ford really doesn't like is Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader. So I don't think there's too much of a risk of that happening.
They're making overtures. They're talking again.
Canadian federal politics are absurd. We're going to stick a fork in that video. It's over. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Loony. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Please leave a comment below if you have something to share. Enjoy this playlist. Check out this video. We've got lots of things to watch. Aaron, Canadian Loony. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching this one. Ciao for now.
Sets us up well for the new world order.